Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out this monoblue artifact deck featuring Urza, Lord High Artificer as our commander, now finally on Arena in the form of Terra Branford, a 4-mana 1/4. When it enters we get to make one of those construct tokens, so it grows with the number of artifacts we control, and then Urza also lets all our artifacts tap to produce blue mana, which is incredibly powerful. And then we also have a mana sink. For 5 mana we first randomize the deck and then exile the top card, which we get to play for free this turn, including potentially lands as well if we haven't played one for a turn yet. So that's Urza, and we're playing it in this kind of controlling blue deck that's looking to set up some powerful combos with cards like the One Ring and Paradox Engine, which we'll get to in a second. So first, the rough breakdown. We've got our mana category, some other ramp artifacts to maybe speed up casting Urza, and if Urza gets removed, makes it easier to redeploy. We've got some other cheap artifacts that will still produce mana with Urza and provide some additional utility. Then we've got our counter spells, which are also great if we can play Urza, and then thanks to our artifacts making blue mana, still keep up a counter spell to interact with the opponent's game plan. Then we've got some additional card draw effects. Then we've got our combo pieces and ways to tutor them up with the One Ring and Paradox Engine, because the One Ring can draw some more cards. Paradox Engine lets us untap all of our non-land permanents whenever we cast a spell, and with Urza in play, all our artifacts produce blue mana, so that can often just lead to us drawing our entire deck, and then it's not too difficult to win the game from there. Then we've got some other bounce spells and other cheap interaction to mess with the opponent's game plan, and then the miscellaneous section includes more creatures that synergize with artifacts, maybe making artifact tokens each time. We've got some ways to take extra turns, since those are also very powerful, especially if we randomly hit them with Urza's ability, and then some other finishers to help close out the game. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration. Of course, any Mox is going to be quite effective. Even if we don't enable Chrome Mox with Imprint, it will still make blue mana with Urza. And then Mox Amber, if we control a legendary, can make mana as well. And then at 2 mana, there's Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mindstone, Transformer, and the Iron Crag. And then in a monocolored deck, the Medallion's also going to be great, especially with Urza, still letting it tap for blue mana while discounting our blue spells. Then there's a Midnight Clock, which can also eventually refresh our hand. Thran Spider, making a Power Stone, is +2 mana with Urza in play. A Relic of Legends is also +2 mana, as we can tap Urza to make an extra blue. Worn Power Stone makes 2 mana if we get to untap with it. And then the Might Stone and Weak Stone has multiple uses, but one of them is making 2 mana that we can maybe spend on abilities or casting artifact spells, and it can draw 2 when it enters, or maybe take out an opposing creature. And then our other artifacts include Mishra's Bauble as another free artifact that can make mana with Urza, but also very good with Emery, as we can loop it back out of the graveyard to draw a card each turn. Tormod Script if we need some cheap graveyard hate. Aether Spell Bomb to bounce opposing creatures or draw cards. The Lantern, more graveyard hate. And then the Reality Chip can maybe help us play stuff off the top. We've got Howling Mine, which is especially synergistic with Urza as one of these old school artifacts that only happens if we have it untapped, but with Urza we can make sure that we draw the extra card each turn while tapping it for the opponent's turn, so they don't get to do the same. And then Winter Moon is the closest we'll get to something like Winter Orb on Arena, can still be incredibly punishing against multicolor mana bases. And then Phyrexian Metamorph can also cheaply copy an artifact or creature that's on the battlefield. Our counter spells start with Spell Pierce, as we can still maybe cast it after deploying our commander by tapping our construct, can maybe protect Urza by countering a non-creature spell that way. Swan Song can do the same. We've got 3 Steps Ahead, which can also maybe copy an artifact if we spree it for additional mana. Wash Away, a cheap way to counter opposing commanders. And then at 2 mana there's Counterspell, and of course Mana Drain, especially powerful in an artifact deck. We also now finally have Cryptic Command on Arena, has lots of useful modes, can counter draw, can tap opposing permanents down or bounce something back, so there's always lots of cool things you can do with it. And then a Spell Swindle, countering a spell and making a boatload of treasure tokens, also very synergistic with Urza on the battlefield. And then Sublime Epiphany, especially powerful with Torrential Gearhulk, but also decent if we just randomly hit it with Urza's ability, because even though it's a counter spell, we can still at least copy something and draw a card with it. Then we've got additional card draw effects with Brainstorm, which can smooth out our draws, and we even have some fetch lands and other shuffle effects to get the most out of it. There's Stock Up to find 2 cards in the top 5. Urza's Command, slightly upgraded on Arena, so can make a pair of Power Stone tokens, as well as maybe a Construct, so that can make lots of artifacts for Urza, can also draw a card with it. We've got Karn, Sign of Urza, another way to make one of those constructs, can also +1 and -1 to often find additional lanes. Thoughtcast with affinity for artifacts can be cast on the cheap to draw 2. Tezzeret can also draw 2 each turn, and then a Thought Monitor, also another affinity card that will draw 2 when it enters. And then we get to the tutor effects, including Fabricate and Whir of Invention with Improvise, as well as Transit Mage, which can specifically find 4 and 5 mana artifacts, and the ones we're most interested in are the One Ring alongside Paradox Engine. So the One Ring, drawing additional cards if we activate it, slightly nerfed on Arena, have to pay 1 mana, but still incredibly powerful, can also protect us when it comes down. And then with Paradox Engine and especially Urza on the battlefield, it's not too difficult to go infinite, and also very good with the other mana producing artifacts in the deck. And then we've got our other interaction. Essence Flux can also maybe save Urza from spot removal while making an additional construct. There's Into the Floodmaw to bounce. Cyclonic Rift can also overload it if we've got the additional mana from our artifacts. Same with River's Rebuke. And then Utter Insignificance can be a good way to shut down a problematic creature commander. And then our miscellaneous section includes the Sea Shark, as well as the Master Thopterist, making additional artifacts that can then turn into additional mana with Urza. Emery can recycle artifacts out of the graveyard, especially good with Spell Bomb and Mishra's Bauble, which we can sacrifice each turn. Unstoppable Plan, also very nice with Urza, as we can tap a bunch of our creatures and other artifacts to make mana, and then once again untap them to have that mana available in the opponent's turn for potential counterspells. Then Harbinger complements Wintermoon for the mana denial strategy, and then we've got some extra turn cards with Manipulation, Time Warp, and Temporal Sundering. Now often when you cast these, if you've got any sort of board presence, the opponent's going to concede, so if you want the games to last a little bit longer, you can maybe take those out. And then Torrential Gearhulk can also get back an instant, especially nice with the more expensive ones like Spell Swindle, Sublime Epiphany, and Cryptic Command. And then a Jin-Gitaxias can be another problematic card for the opponent to deal with, and also very synergistic in our artifact deck with a bunch of card draw effects. And then Ugin, another powerful addition for any colorless strategy. And last but not least, Portal to Phyrexia can also maybe wipe the opponent's board while reanimating creatures turn after turn. And then the mana base is mostly basic islands, some blue fetch lands as well to either shuffle with Brainstorm or to tutor up our Mystic Sanctuary as a non-basic island that's still fetchable, and with enough islands in play this can return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard back on top of our deck, so that can maybe get back a powerful counterspell or maybe an extra turn card, since most of them still end up in the graveyard. We've got Orawara as more interaction, and then some artifact lands with a Seat as a nice blue artifact land with no real drawbacks, Darksteel Citadel, as well as Treasure Vault, so these can all potentially enable some other artifact synergies. We also have Inventor's Fair, which can gain life and eventually maybe tutor up our Paradox Engine or One Ring if needed. And then Fomori Vault can also dig deep to find whatever we're missing, as well as Buried Ruin to maybe get artifacts back out of the graveyard. So a couple useful utility lands, but the mana base is still mostly blue, since we of course have some double and triple blue cards we need to cast. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Arwen, green-white, kind of life gain counters. And all of these cards can be very powerful in the matchup, but yeah, we are missing some early mana acceleration, so then I may not get there in time. It's still tempting, because yeah, Portal can also get around Indestructible, same with River's Rebuke. So maybe this is actually good enough. Yeah, let me try it. Because they're not gonna present a ton of damage super early, I don't think. And then we should have time to play Urza with Swansong backup. And then Urza kind of ramps towards our 5 and 6 mana plays. So we'll just pass for now. And Bristly Bill can draw cards with the Duelist. So nice start. Don't need to fetch just yet, since we wouldn't mind drawing a land. Our opponent might be worried about opposing counter spells. We only have Swan Song, so can't counter creatures. And they ran out Boseiju, so they must not have a ton of other lands in hand. Now Toski also uncounterable, so even if we had a counterspell, it would not have worked. So we're taking 6. And our opponent draws 2, so they've drawn a lot of cards already. I get to play Urza. Hope that Swan Song can protect it. And then take it from there. Suppose I can play Tormod's Crypt. In case I remove my token, then I still have a mana. And it also grows our construct in case it needs to block. Contaminator is acceptable. Doesn't impact the board right now. And yeah, opponent had the perfect answer to Urza. Would have shut down its abilities, although I guess with 4 creatures it would have just taken it out. So we'll say no to that. And then the bird gets bounced by River's Rebuke anyway. Assuming we get to cast it here. Don't think they have any pump spells that I need to worry about. And a Guide of Souls. Alright, so I think my only option is to cast River's Rebuke here. Otherwise I'm pretty dead. Attacking maybe wasn't worth it in case they have the Wandering Emperor to exile a tapped creature, which makes sense in a +1 counter deck. So Guide and Bill. They might have wanted to play Guide first to get the extra energy. Counter on Duelist, draw card. So what can I do myself? I can cast Jingataxius, which doesn't stop what's on the board, but it is not a bad play. Could also keep up Spell Swindle and Counterspell, and hope to leverage those, although once again if they play Toski it's uncounterable. I can still get the treasures out of it, even if it doesn't technically get countered. So that's still an option. If I play Tezzeret, make a Thopter, I'll only have 3 mana up, so only enough for Counterspell. Yeah, I'm actually tempted to keep up Spell Swindle here. Could also Counterspell and then still activate Urza, but that's only useful if we hit an instant during the opponent's turn. Opponent tries Arwen. Could let that resolve still. Or I should Spell Swindle, otherwise Toski I won't be able to counter, even though I get an extra treasure. Leaving them with 3 creatures in play also makes Portal look a lot better. But they're probably going to add a 4th. Which I can then maybe consider counterspelling. Contaminator, so yeah, not opposed to using Counterspell here. Just to leave the board clean for Portal. And get to untap. Cast Portal to Phyrexia. And then I won't be able to keep up anything else. I can attack. And do they have some big curve topper here, maybe? Valor stance, take out my token. So yeah, currently looking to get back maybe the Contaminator. I guess Gala Greeters also has good synergy with Urza. Yeah, I don't hate it actually. Can play Jingataxius and then still have 3 steps ahead up. And that should stop any scary sweepers. And then I can keep Otawara in hand as well in case we need to channel it. And then we'll just pass. Opponent can sink mana into the Crawling Barons. They did actually have the Wandering Emperor this time, as it turns out, so glad I didn't attack. Don't need to counter that, it's beatable.
I hope you're ready to lose. Guards, to me!
Counter on the Samurai.
Remember your training.
I have 2 legends, so this channels for 2 mana. Toski's back. And a Gnarled Colony. That seems fine. Take my turn. Could also use 3 steps ahead to copy Portal to Phyrexia, so that's maybe what we're gonna try and set up next. And get back Guide of Souls to maybe start gaining some life. And a Temporal Sundering should seal the deal here. Although I kind of want to make the 3 steps ahead copy Portal play before they concede to Temporal Sundering. So copy Portal. Copy with Jin. And yeah, that should be good enough. Alright, go ahead and attack. GG's. And that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our opponent's partnering up Thrasios alongside Vile Smasher, so they get to play 4 colors here as well. They've got 2 commanders. Our hand's got potential. Play my artifact lands for Emery. Could play her next turn, or we could transform her first. Yeah, turn 2 Emery isn't bad. Although Transformer can maybe set up Urza. They have Spell Pierce, okay, so regret not going for Emery now. And search for Ascanta. Could go for the Sea Shark instead of Emery. If I play Emery, I can maybe get back the Transformer next turn. So both have their advantages. Yeah, let's go for Emery. And yeah, an artifact land I can also replay, or never mind, it's only cast cards. So cannot play artifact lands. Opponent mills Cornucopia. And their first of 2 commanders. 4 mana to activate. Now Winter Moon's interesting. Can cast it alongside getting back our Solar Transformer. Do have some non-basics myself, but it's probably going to hurt the opponent more. So I probably should have actually cast Winter Moon if they somehow had a counterspell. Then I could have still replayed it thanks to Emery. Windswept Heath is gonna get a basic, no doubt. And another non-basic is not ideal. So I could try Urza, or I can pass with Spell Swindle up. And again, no artifact to cast with Emery. Could also decide to sacrifice Inventor's Fair. Ascanta close to transforming. And yeah, definitely want to fight over Wilderness Reclamation. Make 4 treasures. And then now we can deploy Urza. They might have a wash away to counter it. They do. Alright, that's too bad. Although we can try again next turn. They only get to untap 2 lanes. So back to the command zone. Don't think I cast a Sea Shark here. I guess I do get to transform Ascanta. So that gives him an extra land. Sea Explore. Go to the graveyard. Now Farseek also legal in Brawl. Especially good in these multicolor decks. So they could activate, never mind, no blue mana to activate Ascanta, but an Oasis. Pretty good card. Okay, but now we should be able to cast Urza. And have Sublime Epiphany as backup. So I have exactly enough for Epiphany, so I'm not gonna cast a Spider. We do not have a lot of non-basic lands in the deck, so it's pretty wild that we have 3 basics and 3 non-basics on the battlefield with Winter Moon, but oh well. Now Vial Smasher, not the end of the world, so that resolves. Untap. Tezzeret's nice. Can draw additional cards, maybe hit some more land drops. And then I'll still have Epiphany available, or we could play the Shark, which is quite good with Epiphany if I cast it afterwards. So both are reasonable. I think we try and get Tezzeret going.
I have constructed. You're still one step.
And then now with a land I can afford to attack with my Construct, as I'll still have 6 mana up. And 3 steps can also copy the Construct token, perhaps. Another fetch land to get a basic. To try and play around this Winter Moon. And our opponent wants to bounce it. We're gonna say no. So that's trigger I could also counter with a Sublime Epiphany now. So draw, token, return, counter, counter. All modes, that's satisfying. Takes a while to make mana with Urza. There we go. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Lich, mono-black combo, also with Paradox Engine. So our hand needs to have some counter spells. The Harbinger is not going to be very useful. I think we can do better. This is better, although, I guess once again have the Harbinger. Just a 3 mana 2/2. Yeah, I guess this hand still doesn't have any meaningful interaction, just have some ramp. But maybe that's not good enough. Although we can also expect him to have some discard spells to take away my counters. Alright, this is probably our best hand so far. Don't think the reality chip is gonna survive. And maybe I can get the Sanctuary out of the way, or I can keep up Spell Pierce in case they Thought Seize me on turn 1. And then War of Invention, mostly interested in getting something like a 1 ring to combine with Engine. Skyclave Relic is fine, even though it makes my Spell Pierce worse going forward. So I could play Urza. If they have something like a Cut Down, they could take it out before I can Spell Pierce. I think it's still worth it to try. But Spell Pierce is not guaranteed to protect it. The Lich is gonna venture into the dungeon, that's okay. And now Innocent Blood. Yeah, I can just sack the token here. Not the end of the world. Probably should have floated a blue. And I would have been able to stop the Fatal Push, although they probably would have waited to let the floating mana go away, so probably would not have worked. Alright, so next up, could resolve the engine. And then I've got some mana artifacts to go with it next turn, or I can be a little bit more patient, keep up Spell Pierce in case our opponent has their own engine. A Reservoir, I cannot Spell Pierce, so that's their eventual win condition. And now Dark Confident I cannot counter. So that all happens. Now, if I go for Urza, I'll have 3 mana left. If I go for Paradox Engine, I can War of Invention for 1, and then untap. Yeah, maybe it's another Urza turn. Opponent found Inventor Sphere, so that can tutor up the Paradox Engine. And now Sheoldred's Edict can take care of Urza himself. Back to the command zone. Now costs 8 mana. Liliana I still cannot Spell Pierce, so that's going to get rid of my token. So yeah, the Spell Pierce has been a dead card so far.
Off you go.
If our opponent gets Engine next turn, they still cannot cast it at least. So instead, I can cast mine, and then still Thoughtcast, and go from there. The opponent's deck usually combos off with Paradox Engine, so maybe we can give them a taste of their own medicine. And now we found Counterspell. Okay, if I War of Invention, can't quite War for 4, which is the magic number here to get the 1 ring. So I think we'll pass. And then I'll ditch Spell Pierce if they plus Liliana.
Drop it.
Mindstone resolves. And Davriel isn't the end of the world.
Well, if you're not here for better to deal with me than with demons.
So they'll get some random effect here. So spells cost black less to cast. And if fewer than 2 cards were exiled this way, each opponent draws cards equal to the difference. Did our opponent just exile their own Paradox Engine? They did. Okay, so they're not on the combo plan, I guess. Now I can Cryptic Command, but I don't think I need to use it. And I don't even think I level up Midnight Clock, since I'm happy with my hand. Okay, so we've got a lot of options now. If I were to go for Urza, that generates an extra artifact that will make mana. Or I can start by whirring for the One Ring, tapping Paradox Engine in the process. Activate One Ring. Find a Mind Stone, that's perfect. And yeah, our opponent scoops it up with the One Ring and Paradox Engine. We can keep stringing together more spells, every time generating at least 3 mana, and that number's only going to go up onto the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Italy, a red-green ramp. Our hand seems fine. Lantern's not particularly useful, but it's still an artifact for Urza. And then we've got a pretty powerful counterspell to maybe counter Italy. So I think actually start by thinning out the deck a little bit. We'll still have Misty Rainforest as a shuffle effect for Brainstorm, as well as a way to get our Mystic Sanctuary. Opponent's got a turn 1 Utopia Sprawl. Can hang on to the Lantern for now. And now a Heaped Harvest can also ramp. Alright, so hopefully Urza can stick the landing, and then if we can untap with Cryptic Commands, we can do some damage. Inventor's Fair can start gaining life. Could transform Ironcrag since it still makes mana with Urza. If they remove it, then I'm probably better off declining. So we essentially have 2 mana up here, and yeah, opponent's gonna wipe the board already. That's too bad. So back to the command zone. Cryptic Command has to be kept up to stop Italy. Although I guess there's still 1 mana off. So probably could have afforded to play Unstoppable Plan here instead. They can probably play Italy on back-to-back turns, since the Harvest can also get an extra land. If I play Unstoppable Plan now, I'll still have Cryptic up. Opponent sacrifices the Harvest. And there's a tally, and it's counter draw. Opponent's gonna Boseiju the Unstoppable Plan. Right, so that's gone, but we get a land in return at least. And draw Sublime Epiphany, that's another counter spell. And speaking of counter spells, so now I can play Urza and still have 2 mana counter spell available. there's a tally. We'll counter. And then I can still fetch, get back Cryptic Command if I'd like, and yeah, our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing another very powerful commander in the Brawl queue nowadays. Yuriko, also added through Final Fantasy. So, cannot easily counter it because of ninjutsu for commanders. That being said, this hand's still reasonable. Turn 2 can keep up Counterspell, maybe counter an Enabler if they don't have a 1 mana creature to set up Yuriko. But yeah, it makes sense for them to have a 1 mana flyer. The fairy especially good with ninjas, since you get to pick it back up to scry 2 again. So yeah, this is going to be a very hard matchup. Could have mulliganed to just mana acceleration to try and set up Urza on turn 3. Because yeah, Counterspell's not going to help. At least the mage can block next turn if they don't remove it. And a Mockingbird. So only 1 damage from the ability at least. Opponent's got to discard to hand size. A Metamorph could copy Yuriko, but I don't think that helps me too much. So Transit Mage. And get probably the One Ring. But yeah, if I don't hit my land drop, it doesn't really make a difference. So maybe they need to set up again for next turn. Because they might have other ninjas to set up ninjutsu to enable Yuriko. Right, a Curse Marauder. Surprised they didn't just cast it first, but I guess they wanted to leave it in play. Because they can set up Yuriko, assuming they have some 1 mana flash creature here. That would make sense. Now Ironcrag doesn't let me counterspell. I could still Swan Song. I guess that's reasonable. Could also Metamorph, copy the Marauder just to get rid of it. But one has to assume that they have some other either counterspell or 1 mana creature to set up Yuriko. So then that play's not going to work. It was a Brainstorm instead. So now they could attack, ninjutsu, pick up the Marauder again. And they were able to maybe put something expensive on top to reveal with Yuriko, thanks to the Brainstorm, so that makes sense why they didn't just go for the extra 1 mana creature then. So yeah, this is gonna hurt. It's gonna be the most expensive card in their hand that they could keep on top. Alright, just 1 mana Mockingbird, so maybe they weren't thinking of setting up Yuriko with Brainstorm, or all their cards are cheap. Chromox imprints Spell Snare, so that's maybe also what they were keeping up alongside Brainstorm and the Fairy. So they could still have another counterspell up here to fight over Urza. Keeps both on top. And a Hope of Ghirapur can also prevent us from casting non-creature spells. Alright, I guess I try Urza, hope they don't have Wash Away exactly. And then after I can still Brainstorm, maybe hit a land drop, keep up Swan Song. I will not transform the Ironcrag. Alright, I think I gotta hit some more land drops. We found them. And then could try and hide some cards from a discard spell, like the One Ring. And I'm still gonna draw the Cryptic Command, so I guess we'll hide that one too. More likely to want to play the One Ring next turn. Although they might sack Hope of Girapur, and then I can still cast the Metamorph at the very least. Cavern name's Human. And Marauders next. Have to sack a non-token, so Urza's gone. Opponent gets rid of Yuriko since they can just ninjutsu it. And they're gonna ninjutsu Kaito, which I also cannot Swan Song here. Yeah, ninjutsu is pretty good against blue decks specifically. So we're in trouble. Although only one unknown in hand, so maybe they don't have any meaningful interaction left. Although then again Mockingbird can always copy the Marauder to get rid of my non-token. Although that one we can maybe counter since Cavern's not naming bird. Opponent decides to lock down my construct with Kaito. Okay, so might be a one-ring turn after all. As opposed to Thought Monitor. Good Thought Monitor, and then next turn try and copy it with a Metamorph. Which is another option we have available. Would maybe help pressure Kaito a little bit better. Can block the Hope. So, not opposed to that, although of course again they could Mockingbird the Marauder to get rid of it. I think I still one ring, lets me keep up Counterspell. And then I'll have more artifacts to discount the Thought Monitor next turn. Kaito makes an emblem, pumping ninjas.
I just hate a fair fight.
This turn we're safe from an attack. Although they can still sneak Yuriko onto the battlefield and pick up the Marauder, of course. Seems worthwhile to draw with the One Ring, even though it's going to start dealing damage to me. So opponent just picking up Yuriko again. And a fairy. Don't think I need to counterspell it, even though we don't get many opportunities to. Gonna use my mana to draw instead. Alright. We get to draw. And wow, opponent scoops it up, so yeah, I guess Cryptic here with Counterspell backup could also tap down their team, so that would buy us more time. But yeah, we had a lot of options now. Can maybe look into redeploying Urza soon once we build up more artifacts, so we can still keep up our author interaction. But yeah, Yuriko got to do pretty much whatever it wanted, and Urza still came out on top. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Cloud, mono-white equipment. Our hands are very powerful, if we can hit our lane drops. Keep up Spell Pierce, turn 2 Signet, and then we'll have Mana Drain up. Savior, we cannot counter. Can still Spell Pierce if needed. But they're gonna go for Cloud. And what equipment? Maybe something with protection from blue. Yep, Sword of Fire and Ice. So we'll want to keep up Spell Pierce to counter that at the very least. Alright, so can't afford to Power Stone, but I can play Unstoppable Plan, which will untap the Signet. No sword for you. So land for Urza would be ideal. Opponent might have some other free spell in hand like Solitude, but Yeah, we've got mana drain up now. Probably just Selfless Savior holding priority. And Loron seems worth countering. Would blow up maybe the Unstoppable Plan or the token. And yeah, that's gonna be good enough already. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. And it's a little slow out of the gates, but maybe that's fine against Muldrotha. Nothing so far. Good counterspell up. And then when we play Urza, we can still either Essence Flux or Spell Pierce. The One Ring isn't bad either. So our opponent must have their own counterspell in hand. So don't want to be the one to blink first. Also, they could respond to the trigger making the artifact token with removal, and then I wouldn't be able to Essence Flux. So just waiting the one extra turn could already make a difference. Now I could play a Reality Chip and then still have interaction available. Opponent counter spells, that's fine. Rather you counter Reality Chip than a One Ring or Urza. Oracle of the Alpha I don't care about. So now I can Urza with counterspell backup. If I Unstoppable Plan, I'll only have Spell Pierce and Essence Flux available. So I don't think I go for it. A Reclamation Sage would blow up our token. Yeah, that's not great, but I can live with it. So now I could try the One Ring. That resolves. We'll pass it back. Can draw in their turn if we don't need to counterspell. And now an Elspeth's Nightmare, that's okay. The chapter 2 will be somewhat annoying, but I can just Essence Flux here. And then... yeah, I don't think I tap the ring since I could still draw with it. That works. End of turn, use the ring. Alright, so now we need to empty out our hands, otherwise they can take something away, or we could bounce the Nightmare, but then they also get to recast it, so probably time to just deploy a bunch of artifacts. If I draw with the One Ring, I guess with Plan I could draw again. So that's maybe still worth it. And a Cryptic Command, also an option. So let us tap Bauble for blue, tap Urza for blue. Can cast Plan. And Power Stone. And then untap. Alright, so we have both Counterspell and Cryptic up. They can only take one. With Polluted Delta we can also get the Sanctuary, although Nightmare will exile our graveyard next turn. And yeah, our opponent concedes, seeing this hand with all we have in play already. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Winter, Junt, Delirium, and we've got a keepable hand, I think. Turn 1 looting. So that can already add some card types to the graveyard to set up their commander. Planeswalker and Instants, and now Artifact as well. So yeah, opponent could have turn 2 Delirium here. And they sieging Ataxius. A good one to know about. We've got Ironcrag, and then probably keep up Urza's command and 3 steps, as opposed to tapping out for Urza. Although Nethergoyf, already a 5/6, is not messing around. So we'll see how the game develops, but yeah, that's gonna be rough. Take 5. And add Glissa into the mix. At least found a bounce spell. Not sure which of the two is more problematic. I mean, at least Glissa's 3 mana to redeploy as opposed to 5 for the Nethergoyf. Might have to just take the hit. Could also shrink down Glissa with a command. And then still make a pair of Power Stone tokens. That wouldn't be the worst idea. Could also go for Power Stones and Construct to have something larger. But this one does enter tapped, so we can't set up an ambush with it. Not that we would be able to. But yeah, I'll shrink down their team. Take a little bit less damage. Now they maybe feel safe tapping out for Winter. And then I can still play Urza. And then maybe bounce Winter for 3 mana. Because yeah, our hand size is reduced by 5, so we'd have to discard to hand size a bunch end of turn otherwise. So I can play Urza. I suspect they will have removal for it. But at least we get to have a pretty efficient turn here. I'm bouncing Winter. And then I can still Thoughtcast. And wow, Pono scoops it up, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing the partner duo of Thrasios, now with the Weaver as well. Our hand's pretty good. I imagine Wintermoon's going to be effective against a 4-color deck. And then we have Acceleration for Urza, and maybe set up an early Ugin as well. So yeah, we're not trying to make friends with his deck. I'd love to see the non-basic land. The more the merrier. Turn to Thrasios. Not in a hurry to Wintermoon. Can Signet keep up Brainstorm in case we need to hide something from a discard spell. And the Weaver's next. Opponent draws a card. Okay, so now could be a good time for Wintermoon. Can play Mindstone into Wintermoon. They only get to untap 1 land. Although now they know they should fetch for basics if they have fetch lands in hand. Take 3. Opponent draws. Another non-basic, Breeding Pool. Untapped, so they do have double blue here to maybe counter my commander. Could still go for it, since I can probably cast it on back-to-back turns. So we'll start with Medallion. And then try a 3-mana Urza. That resolves. So then I am 1 mana short of activating Urza here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll just pass. Could also brainstorm and maybe still find something I can cast. Yeah, that could be worth it. Only get punished if I keep Ugin in hand and they draw a discard spell, but I could put Ugin on top. And now I have 3 steps as a counter spell available, so that's nice. So I can hide Ugin. Something like this. And then pass with 3 steps available. And then next turn I might be able to Ugin and Time Warp. Haven't quite done the math. But we should be getting close, especially if Ugin makes mana. Opponent's attacking. So there might be a board wipe incoming here. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, this Winter Moon was just game over. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Yuna, green-white enchantments. Our hand is okay, but we're missing some mana acceleration. Don't have a fetch line to go with Brainstorm. So it could be better. Don't expect a ton of must-counter cards with a Swan Song, or removal I need to flicker with Essence Flux. So I'll take a mulligan. This is not a big improvement. This I can try. And then we're pretty far from casting the Gearhulk. At least Reality Chip still contributes towards Affinity. And so does the Citadel. Authority not irrelevant, since it means my token enters tapped, so can't immediately make mana. So next turn we can Thoughtcast, or we can play Emery. And Ride can help them ramp. And Sheltered by Ghosts exiles Reality Chip. So cannot Thoughtcast, so Emery it is. Probably wanted to keep Island available, but that's alright. So Mill the Bauble, that's a good one to get back with Emery each turn. And Overlord can now apply some pressure. Still fine to play Urza. So can't quite Thoughtcast using the Bauble, so we'll sack it instead. So Emery can get it back next turn. Halfling coming up. Alright, Overloaded Cyclonic Rift could be in our future. We have the One Ring already, so then Whir could get our Paradox Engine to set up the combo. So I don't hate my spot. Emery get back Bauble. So I could pass, keep up Overloaded Cyclonic Rifts. That's maybe the safest play, or I can protect myself with the One Ring. Overloaded Rift seems safer. So I can maybe wait for them to cast another spell first. Opponent goes to attackers. Could still take the hit here, see if they want to cast something, and then end of turn Rift, so they need to rebuild. Alright, so let the trigger resolve. And then now Overload. We'll get our Reality Chip back, so that's an extra mana. Can still sack Bauble, get it back with Emery, and then still tap it for mana. Leyline Binding a Response is interesting, since that's also now going to get bounced. But I guess I can just get rid of the token for free. And then they wouldn't be able to binding afterwards, since they didn't have enough basic types. So yeah, that made sense. They will have to discard their hand size too. So I'm still glad I waited until end of turn to go for it. And yeah, opponent scoops it up here. Can pretty easily combo off between one ring and we're getting whatever piece we're missing. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Kefka, Grixis, kinda control mid-range, and another fun commander. Hand's got potential. Maybe keep up Spell Pierce on one in case there's a discard spell. Don't want to lose a Signet. And yep, Inquisition gets Spell Pierced. Signet into Lantern. And then next turn we can try Urza. Opponent going for a talent, so discard a non-land card here. Otherwise we would have to discard 2 lands. Alright, so we're all in on Urza. I have 3 artifacts for Inventor's Fair as well. And then next turn I can maybe activate the ability. Opponent with Baleful Strix. Also makes a lot of sense in the Kefka deck since it has 2 types, artifact and creature. So if they discard it, they get to draw an extra card. But yeah, we get to untap with our commander. Sea Shark isn't bad either. But I think we spin the wheel before I play the land in case we hit a land. And then activate, leave the token untapped in case we maybe hit a bounce spell. I might bounce the Strix. Essence Flux can flicker my commander. A mana short of playing Sea Shark first. But now I can play the Shark. Alright, so we're making progress. Next turn can maybe activate again. Or we can go tutor up an artifact with Inventor's Fair. Opponent's got their red mana for a fear of missing out. Another creature with several types. Discards Wanderer, so their team now has flying. That's nice. And feed the Swarm Urza. So back to the command zone. Can still recast it next turn. And then we're probably okay making the trade for Baleful Strix. Gotta get past it at some point. Our opponent accepts. Okay. They could cast Kefka. Only have a land to discard. Nope, go for the throat once again, taking out Urza. Yeah, that happens. Could still sack the Lantern now in response, but then I shrink down my constructs, so I don't think that's worth it. Back to the command zone, now 8 mana. It's getting a little pricey, and Hectice gets my last card. We're still ahead on board with the constructs. And Inventor's Fair could tutor something up. Could get something that produces mana, but that doesn't really make up for the fact that we just lost a mana producing land. Although it would grow the constructs, so maybe that's still worth it. Also triggers the Sea Shark. Yeah, I'm hesitant to get something expensive that I cannot cast right now, otherwise they can just make me discard it. What about Thought Monitor? 1, 2, 3, 4 artifacts. So costs 3 mana. So 1 short. So it has to be something else that's 2 mana or less. So then I guess Howling Mine could also be fun just to draw more cards. Maybe we get to see that in action. Winter Moon, also not bad here. Yeah, it's gotta be Winter Moon, sadly. When our opponent only has a 1 basic in play. Grow the Constructs, attack. Alright, so we got to see this mono-blue Urza deck in action, and as I've said, if you play Urza as your commander, don't expect to make any friends. It's an incredibly powerful deck, and you're also gonna face some tough opposition, other commanders that are often in the hell queue, as well as apparently the partners, which are also pretty highly ranked according to the algorithm. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. I wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.